Really love that game for its tone, its storytelling, and its music, and unfortunately, all of those things are substantially weaker here in Doom the Dark Ages. The overall tone of this game feels far more juvenile than ever before, with a plotline and characters that feels like an MA-rated He-Man. The dragon flying missions and mech levels are not the worst thing ever, but they're also not good, and the OST is sadly just a massive downgrade. And the audio mix seems to know this, since it's often super hard to hear any of the music at all. I'm certain that most of the discourse around Doom the Dark Ages will center on comparisons to the other games in the modern trilogy, because both of those games are genre-defining masterpieces in their own ways and for different reasons. My theory about Doom the Dark Ages is that it weren't trying to surpass what they had done before. I don't think they were preoccupied with potential review scores or Reddit discourse or YouTube essays. I don't think they were allowing themselves to be burdened by the legacy of this franchise, or the weight of expectations, or the sorts of unflattering comparisons that might emerge when comparing this game to Eternal or the 2016. I think they were just trying to make a fun-ass video game with heaps of new ideas, and I suspect they were comfortable with the fact that not all of those ideas would land. You know what Doom the Dark Ages feels like?
What the fuck's going on?
Spin-off. Like a modern-day Far Cry Blood Dragon or something. It's playing for the fences with a new time period, a new setting, new characters, a new story, new core gameplay, new gimmicks, new everything. He'd have spent more than 15 years working on this Doom trilogy, and I think they just wanted to have some fun making this one, and that really comes through, because despite Dark Ages' many shortcomings, I had a hell of a lot of fun playing this one, pun intended.
Oh, DPD lah ni.
Apa pasal delay-delay ni? Apa hal?
Force of nature. The less we knew about him, the better, because our imagination didn't have lengthy cutscenes that would vividly depict images or events. It was, for the most part, holograms and voice recordings and codec entries. Those who wanted to dive deep into the lore and storyline, they chose to, while the rest of us were happy just to let the overall
I have an idea, hang on. Aduh, weh.
While it didn't overplay its hand and never by storytelling, it definitely picked a lane that set it apart from 2016. Things that were hinted at and alluded to previously would now become the basis for a fully-fledged storyline, one that positioned the Slayer as connected to an ancient order of protectors, locked in an eternal battle with hell, hence the title. Doom the Dark Ages goes way further than even what Doom Eternal was doing, and I don't think it's to the game's benefit. Part of it is just the fact that I don't think this story stuff works very well on its own narrative.
I'm out of there.
But just as this, the Slayer is a super weapon controlled by a race of alien dudes who are kind of like the Covenant in 4K when the human sentinels can't push back the demonic force.
Okay.
The Slayer is deployed as a sort of piece of emergency break glass fail-safe thing. And when he's done his job, he's beamed back up to his holding pen like a racehorse after a derby. Anyway, shock horror, the Slayer eventually escapes captivity, and while he's pissed at his captors,
oh my god.
all pissed at the forces of hell who are chasing a MacGuffin thing. Thus begins the
Sekejap aku baru dapat apa pakai iPhone balik. Aku tukar USB aku ni. Tukar USB lain. Tadi keyboard tu dia delay, aku tak tahu asal. Dah okey sikit ah.
But there's a lot of it to skip, and none of it's good. So I don't think it's unfair to be at least a little critical of it. Here's the thing, right? I think your average Doom fan is getting older. I'm gonna guess the average age of people buying a full-price new-release Doom game is like 30+ years old, right? Why then do we have this storyline that's, like we said in the intro, kind of like Masters of the Universe, but with gore? It's a collection of really played-out tropes that we've all seen dozens of times before, and none of it offers a unique spin on any of the things that have inspired it. The aliens look a little too Halo. The humans look a little too Gears of War. The way the Slayer is presented is a little too Space Marine. The portrayal of Hell's forces is a little too Diablo. Hell, there's even some Eldritch tentacle monsters in there at one point who look exactly like every other Eldritch tentacle monster you've ever seen. And I think that's a really crucial point when talking about Dark Ages storytelling. All of the things series it's leaning on, I'm already well serviced
Oh, no.
in this area by other franchises. The defining aspect of the modern Doom trilogy is the innovation it brings to bear in its gameplay. So it's a real shame that the story side of the game is defined by how utterly generic it is. I think there's also a more problem with the presentation of the Doom Slayer. In the past, creative director Hugo Martin has spoken about how the framing of the Slayer was inspired by that scene from RoboCop when he's first brought online and he's walking through the police precinct, but you can't quite see him, or you're only seeing things through his eyes. It leverages that Spielberg idea where the scariest monster is the one that you can't quite see. In Doom the Dark Ages, you see a lot of the Slayer, and so that sense of awe that he's supposed to be is quickly lost. Combined with how silly and juvenile the storyline is, Dark Ages starts to feel less like RoboCop 1 and more like RoboCop 3. And if you've seen RoboCop 3, you would know that that's not a flattering comparison. Anyway, look, I don't want to make too big a deal of this because you can space pass through all of it. Honestly, I don't think you should. I promise you, you're really not missing out on anything. And while we don't buy Doom games for their storylines, it would have been nice for all the effort that went into this stuff to have resulted in something worth experiencing.
Is this world is
Awakening. Doom the Dark Ages is a technical marvel, and honestly, that is the least surprising thing you'll ever hear because it's id Software we're talking about. And I can think of few studios that have a better, more reliable track record when it comes to technology. Dark Ages is an id Tech 8 game, and if you're all familiar with this engine, then you would know that id probably performed some demonic ritual in order to summon it into existence. Mere mortals alone could not have created something that looks this good and runs this well. Yeah, sure, I was playing on a high-end PC, absolutely, but you'd be surprised how often that doesn't help these days, since most PC port optimization is utter garbage. Not Dark Ages though. 4K, absolutely cranked settings across the board, and I was still getting over 100 frames a second in most instances, zero crashes, zero bugs, just technically flawless in a way that makes you feel utterly spoiled in this modern era of half-baked ports and buggy unfinished releases. But what of art design? Well, you've been looking at the gameplay this whole time, so it feels almost redundant to say it aloud, but yeah, Doom the Dark Ages looks fucking awesome. Part of that is the technical aspect where id have been able to put more. Doom the Dark Ages is one of the most technically impressive games you can play on a PC, and if you want to experience every ounce of its potential, then you're going to want to play on a GPU from this video sponsor NVIDIA. Unlock DLSS 4 multi-frame generation and NVIDIA Reflex thanks to NVIDIA's cutting-edge hardware. Click below to check it out for yourself and stick around to the end of the video too. I have some pretty mixed feelings about Doom the Dark Ages, but I'll tell you what I feel most of all, grateful. Because I don't love this game as much as I love 2016, and I don't think it's as mechanically rich as Doom Eternal. I'm just really glad that id Software is out here taking big swings. Like, imagine the courage and work ethic it would take to completely redesign your core gameplay loop for each new entry in a trilogy. That's just not how it's done in the modern era. We're very used to iterative sequels that have landed on a core gameplay model and that's stretched out over 1, 2, 3 or more games. But it really did go back to the drawing board.
Wah, you play Doom pula sekarang. Oh, engkau punya. Oh, cactus. Aku kat siapa ni?
Ya, saya ni apa professional Marvel Rival player.
Ui.
Professional ke?
Nah, bahak je. Beda.
Nanti next time. Tomorrow after I work.
Didn't enjoy the weapon swapping and ammo management of Doom Eternal. In Eternal, id wanted you to play the game
tomorrow morning I work.
Here in Dark Ages, the choice is put back in the hands of the
Diorang ni, diorang dia ni kerja kak.
Ya. Betulan game ni kadang-kadang stress if play ranking.
Kita orang bukan main rank pun.
Quick mission right? Oh, then okay lah.
I think it also unlocks this new feeling of
Miss
being
that
a
at home.
berserker. So often you charge right into an enemy's face, unloading everything that you have as quickly as possible, grinning with glee as you turn their own attacks against them. With a gameplay model that incentivizes.
Wait, I need to like restart my stream. Hi, yo, hang on. Aduh.
Are you streaming now?
Yummy eating 3. Oh my god, 8-4.
Far more juvenile than ever before, with a plotline and
Bye-bye,
characters that feels like a MA-rated He-Man, the dragon flying missions.
Oi, bapak ah.
Not the worst thing ever, but they're also not good.
Okay, dah start dah.
T is sadly just a massive massive downgrade versus the work of Nick Gordon. And the audio mix seems to know this. It's often super hard to hear any of the music at all. I'm certain that most of the discourse around Doom the Dark Ages was centered on comparisons to the other games in the modern trilogy, because both of those games are genre-defining masterpieces in their own way. My theory about Doom the Dark Ages is that it weren't trying to surpass what they had done before. I don't think they were preoccupied with potential review scores or Reddit discourse or YouTube essays. I don't think they were allowing themselves to be buried by the legacy of this franchise, or the expectations, or the sorts of unflattering comparisons that might emerge when comparing this game to Eternal.
Lekas Puan dah kenapa?
I think
Dah
they
kenapa?
wanted to make fun-ass video games full of heaps of new ideas, and I suspect they were open to that, but not all of those are land. You know what Doom the Dark Ages feels like? It feels like a spin-off, like a modern-day Far Cry Blood Dragon or something. It's swinging for the fences with a new time period, a new setting, new characters, a new story.
Dah. What the fuck? Where is you? What the fuck?
Oh no.
Some fun making this one, and it really comes through. Because despite Dark Ages' many shortcomings, I had a hell of a lot of fun playing this one.
Wah, penting kan nampak pistol saja. Badan dia tak tahu bagaimana. And then Billy died next to me and then I professional juga dia orang.
When it comes to storytelling in the modern Doom games, I think Doom 2016 had it down cold. The Slayer was less a man and more a force of nature. The less we knew about him, the better, because our imagination could fill the gaps. The game didn't have lengthy cutscenes that would vividly depict images or events. It was, for the most part, holograms, voice recordings, codec entries. Those who wanted to dive deep into the lore and storyline could do that if they chose to, while the rest of us were happy just to let the overall vibes suffice. And the vibes were excellent. Doom Eternal was not content with that. While it didn't play its hand and never felt bogged down by storytelling, it definitely hit a lane that set it apart from 2016. Things that were hinted at and alluded to previously were the basis for a free-flowing storyline. One position, the Slayer is connected to an ancient order of protectors, locked in an eternal battle Doom the Dark Ages goes way further than anyone else.
Orang yang festival Gator
I don't think it's to the game's benefit. Part of it is just the fact that I don't think the story stuff works very well on its own merits.
Yeah, story speed ahead. Oh, Billy Dancing, Billy joget-joget.
Oi, ambil kau.
In 4K, when the human sentinels can't push back the demonic hordes, the Slayer is deployed as a sort of in case of emergency
You got them. Oh!
safe thing. And when he's done his job,
Lagi, we are
Oh, shit.
celebrating.
Ah.
We are celebrating.
The Slayer eventually escapes captivity.
The break
And while he's pissed
time.
at his captors, he's even more pissed at the forces of hell who are chasing him.
Bodoh.
Sorry.
Thus begins the MacGuffin chase daisy chain.
Penakut Billy juga dengan ni.
Relics and keys and power sources all need to be either obtained or unleashed in order to stop
Let's
this
go.
incursion into
Tengok
the
dia
world of the living. I know there's plenty of
Report Jeff for throwing.
story in a Doom game, bro. That's like going to
Throw out.
plenty about the acting. Yeah, I agree to an extent.
Aku ni nak hilang apa? Ada kesiannya nak
Skip it.
datang lah. Aku bawa sampai dah.
Doom fan is getting older, right? Like, I'm gonna guess the average age of people buying a full price new release Doom game is like 30 plus years old, right? Why then do we have this storyline that's, like we said in the intro, kind of like Masters of the Universe, but with gore? It's a collection of really played out tropes that we've all seen dozens of times before, and none of it
Baik-baik
offers a
aja.
unique spin on any of the things that have inspired it. The
Baik-baik
aliens look a
aja.
little too Halo, the humans look a little too Gears of War, the Slayer is presented as a little too Space Marine, Troll's versus is a little too Diablo. Hell, there's even some Eldritch tentacle monsters in there at one point who look exactly like every other Eldritch tentacle monster you've ever seen. And I think that's a really crucial point when talking about Dark Ages storytelling. All of the things it's leaning on, I'm already well serviced in those areas by other franchises. The defining aspect of a modern Doom trilogy is the innovation it brings to bear in its gameplay. So it's a real shame that the storytelling is defined by how utterly generic it feels. I think there's also a core problem with the presentation of the Doom Slayer. In the past, Craig and Martin have spoken about how the framing of the Slayer was inspired by that scene from Robocop, demonstrating war and can't see him, or you're only seeing things through his eyes. It leverages that silver idea where the scariest monster is the one that you can't quite see.
What?
In the Dark Ages, you just really love his Slayer. And so the sense of awe that he's
Oi!
quickly lost, combined with how
Oh,
Boleh
okay,
lah.
wait, what the fuck? I was joking.
it starts to feel less like Robocop 1 and more like Robocop 3. And if you've seen Robocop 3, you would know that that's not bad. Anyway, look, I don't want to make too big a deal of this because, yeah, you can spacebar through all of it. Honestly, I think you should. I promise you, you're really not missing out on anything. And while we don't buy Doom games for their storylines, it would have been nice for all the effort that went into this stuff to have resulted in something worth experiencing. Doom the Dark Ages is a technical marvel, and honestly, that is the least surprising thing you'll ever hear because it's id Software we're talking about. And I can think of few studios that has a better, more reliable track record. Dark Ages is an id Tech 8. If you're all familiar with this engine, then you would know that id probably performed some demonic ritual in order to summon it into existence. Mere mortals alone could not have created something that looks this good for this world.
Sama before!
But you'd be surprised how often that doesn't help these days, since most PC port optimization is garbage. Not Dark Ages though. Okay, absolutely crank settings across the board, and I'm still getting over 100 frames a second in most instances, 0 crashes, 0 bugs, just technically flawless in a way that makes you feel utterly spoiled in this modern era of half-baked ports and buggy unfinished releases.
Finally.
What about design? Well, you've been looking at the gameplay this whole time, so it feels almost redundant to say it aloud, but yeah, Doom the Dark Ages looks fucking awesome. Part of that is the technical aspect, where id have been able to put more detail into every inch of the image while still maintaining incredible performance. Part of it are these skyboxes, which create a real sense of place, like the endless war of hell rages around you while you play your own pivotal part. The biggest part, though, is the overall art design. The decision to set Dark Ages in the distant past has allowed id's artists to run absolutely wild, inventing an all-new visual language for their universe that is perfectly in keeping with everything that's come before it, or after it, I guess, but you know what I mean. The environments of Dark Ages move seamlessly back and forth from sci-fi to medieval fantasy.
No, kau nak kitim. Alah.
What Destiny and Warhammer 40k does,
Mau nak claim kena keluar benda. Alamak.
putting in a way that the storytelling just doesn't.
Oh, quick match.
It does look like its own fresh thing here. It really does. And without giving too much away, there are some settings at the back end of the game that really stand out, both visually and thematically. I think everyone's going to get bring peace to this universe. One of the defining aspects of Dark Ages is the way it changes up the approach to level design in a Doom game. The previous two entries were strictly linear affairs. Some levels might have had some branching pathways this way or that, but by and large, it was all corridors leading into combat arenas, which led into more corridors, which led into more combat arenas. And honestly, no complaints on that front, since the level design provided just enough exploration, pacing, and environmental storytelling to keep things hang together beautifully. But if you were someone that at some point hoped for more explorable spaces, boy oh boy, is Dark Ages made.
Dobrý to je. Ne. Dome, děkuju za pátý.
Campaign, not too many. Most of the time, the levels that you'll step into are these expansive, free-form maps where you can go in any direction you please and accomplish objectives in whatever order you like. Most of the time, it's stuff like destroy 3 Hellgates, and there's one at each corner of the map, and it makes no difference which one you go after first or last. I'm going to be really interested to see how people respond to these new level layouts, because personally, I really enjoy them, but they do come at the expense of the sort of tight, breakneck pacing that I'm sure many Doom fans enjoy. The levels are huge, but their twisting, turning points of interconnectivity can make them a little tricky to navigate. But when you do arrive at a combat arena, it's the same good times you've come to expect. We'll talk more about that in the combat block. It's what's between these arenas that's particularly new and novel here in Dark Ages. There's a hell of a lot of systems automated in the nooks and crannies of these levels. Sometimes upwards of 10 or 12. They're always relatively easy to find owing to a map you can bring up with the button, and it shows you really clearly where that secret is. Based on the map layout, you can usually guess how to get there. I guess my one criticism of this open world design that's so leveraging the secret hunting, you really do spend a lot of time in this map, far more than I would have liked. I think some of the satisfaction that comes from these secrets is lost in the path that is so clearly signposted.
Aduh.
The map means you're spending too much time letting it guide you rather rather than your own sense of curiosity or because you spied something interesting off in the distance. So while I don't think the way id pulled this off is perfect, and while I expect some people won't like it, I personally really enjoyed this approach to level design. After 2 games spent barreling through linear time, the levels that you'll step into are these expansive, free-form maps where you can go in any direction you please and accomplish objectives in whatever order you like. Most of the time it's stuff like destroy 3 hell gates, and there's one at each corner of the map, and it makes no difference which one you go after first or last. I'm going to be really interested to see how people respond to these new level layouts, because personally I really enjoy them, but they do come at the expense of the sort of tight, breakneck pacing that I'm sure many Doom fans enjoy. The levels aren't huge, but they're twisting, turning points of interconnectivity, which make them a little tricky to navigate. But when you do arrive at a combat arena, it's the same good times you've come to expect. But we'll talk more about that in the combat block. It's not the feeling these arenas are particularly new and novel in Dark Ages. There's a hell of a lot of secrets. Sometimes upwards of 10 or 12. They're always relatively easy to find onto a map you can bring up with a press of a button, and it shows you really clearly where that secret is. And based on the map layout, together. Just kind of get there. I guess my one criticism of this open world design that's so leveraged into secret hunting, you really do spend a lot of time in this map, far more than I would have liked. I think some of the satisfaction that comes from these secrets is lost when the path to them is so clearly signposted. And I think the utility of the map means you're spending too much time in your dungeon rather than your own sense of curiosity or if you spotted something interesting off in the distance. So I don't think the way id pulled this off is perfect, and while I expect some people won't like it, I personally really enjoy this approach to level design. After 2 games of battling through a linear level, it was like a difference in the actual nature of objectives, but it's
What?
at my own pace, and then I can take the time to do absolutely everything.
Why is Spider-Man?
Much like the combat model, you, not id,
Oi.
I guess that's probably a neat segue into the most important part of this experience. As interested as I am to hear Doom fans react to this new level, I am way more interested to hear their reaction to this new combat model. I'm going to have some strong thoughts on this one. So right off the top, I'll tell you,
Oh Lord.
Similar to what 2016 was, but
Help!
significantly evolved and also harkening back to the classic Doom game, just as id said they wanted to do. So where to begin with this? Well, I think the first thing you should know is that if we're talking about the difficulty presets that id have calibrated, this is a hell of a lot easier than Doom Eternal. I think I played Doom Eternal on the normal mode, and I found it pretty tricky at times. I played this one on ultra violence, so one step up from normal mode, and I think the phrase cakewalk might be a little strong, but it was definitely in that ballpark. I would say that if you're at all comfortable with shooters, you absolutely have to play on that ultra violence difficulty. And if you're a confident FPS player, then you should probably head straight into Nightmare. I kind of wish I did that. But this conversation is a little different this time around because of how id are approaching difficulty in the Dark Ages. Those core difficulties I listed are really just presets for a vast number of difficulty options, and you can tune those options however you please. Things like enemy damage output, your damage output, game speed, parry window, and a whole bunch of other stuff can be tweaked like never before, making this both the most accessible and most challenging Doom yet. It's some very cool work from id that's going to make this game playable to a whole bunch of people who might have been unable to play this, and it's going to give highly skilled players and speedrunners a huge amount of ways to crank the challenge. This more flexible approach to difficulty is really in keeping with the overall design ethos of Dark Ages. Flexibility is the watchword in level design and pacing, in particular in combat. Doom Eternal is rather famous for how restrictive its combat model was. Its enemies were each padlock that would only accept a certain type of key, aka weapon. Here, you force the lock by using a different weapon. You can really how the game is designed to play. Ammo shortages, a shortcoming that will compound when the next enemy spawns in requiring a specific weapon. You just spent all of your ammo for that weapon on the last enemy, on and on. An extremely well-built but also extremely inflexible combat model that engendered a real love-hate response. The Doom Eternal was your absolute goat, and you've been chasing that high ever since. Doom Eternal was just too much, and you put it down like before. The load-bearing pillars in Doom Dark Ages aren't weapon swapping or ammo management, they're parrying and melee. Almost every enemy you encounter in the game will have both ranged and melee attacks. And if those attacks blow through, you can parry them with your shield. Briefly stuns them when you're opening it. It also infills your melee ability, which does
The fuck, I'm off dah sangkut.
What the?
Never mind.
where you were
Ambil kau, aku 1v1 ni.
the enemy rather than away because you got your sustain from glory kills. Eternal took this further by tying your ammo economy to those glory kills, but Eternal also invited you to stand back on occasion. There are almost zero circumstances, so you don't want to be immediately face-tanking every enemy you see. Whoever or whatever spawns in the battlefield, the best thing you can do is run straight up to them and engage them at point-blank range. And you can do that really easily thanks to your shield charge, which basically teleports you to when you are up in their grill, here's when you can lay down melee haymakers and then carry their attacks by charge of melee attacks while loading super shotgun rounds into their skulls when you have to do so. This playstyle is so incentivized. There are certain enemy types who basically can't be killed at range because they're too protected. You need to get close to them. This playstyle is so incentivized that there's an upgrade for your rocket launcher that makes it so that after you carry an enemy attack, your rocket splash damage that would otherwise actually heals you. So you're essentially just shooting rockets at point and it kicks in and it's glorious. All of these things in aggregate. I am a shield charge and melee attacks and how they recharge.
Holy shit!
Design which invites all of this. No other game has channeled the spirit of the Berserker into the Dark Ages does. I get going in this game and shit really starts
Together to victory!
that comes over me, like this feeling of just wanting to rip and tear until it is done. The previous games have both done a great job of inciting this feeling, but I don't think either of them have done it as well or do it as regularly as Dark Ages does. id Software said that we were like a fighter jet in Doom Eternal, but here we're like a tank. I think that's true, but I think it's slightly
What happened?
differently. In Eternal, we were like
The fuck,
a
Cap?
tiger, fast and always aiming for the jugular of whatever we were hunting. But here, we're like a bear, just killing and mauling every one of our targets, one after the other. So that feeling absolutely rules, but it does come at great cost, and I'd say we are in this together. Even if you didn't vibe with Eternal's combat model better, I'll respect it. So much of it was genius, and it's a shame that rather than adapting its best aspects, much of it has just been tossed away. Weapon swapping is the perfect example. In Eternal, weapon swapping was instant because it had to be. The whole combat model was predicated on you quickly switching back and forth between weapons based on which enemies you were facing. In Dark Ages, there is a very long global cooldown that kicks in after you use a melee or shield attack, which stops you from queuing up a weapon swap, and when you do swap, the animation is fairly lengthy. I'm sure there are good balance reasons for this, but it's honestly just really frustrating, as I'd regularly find myself in situations where I want to quickly switch to my shotgun or whatever after getting ambushed by a demon, only I couldn't do it for 2 or 3 seconds, which felt like an eternity. When people complained about forced weapon swapping in Doom Eternal, I don't think they were saying that they didn't want to be able to change weapons when they wanted to. They were saying, stop forcing us to change so often. I think id overcorrected here. Same goes for enemy design. Eternal's enemies required specific weapons and specific tactics, so much so that many people found it oppressive. Here in Dark Ages, the opposite is true. Every single enemy is fought the same way, which is, like I said,
Yeah,
up to their face and start swinging. Again, I don't think anyone was asking for enemies to not have unique weaknesses. We just wanted more options to exploit those weaknesses. Once again, I do think id went too far here. These issues really show their teeth toward the back end of the game, where the combat arenas really start to break down. It just throws a ton of shit at you all at once, and with how prolonged those engagements are, you start to notice how little this combat model is asking of you. All of this culminates in a final boss encounter, which is very, very bad, to the point where I do wonder if it's the result of a development deadline, because I refuse to believe that a studio this talented and who put this much work into the past 3 games would settle for such a disappointing film.
Defeat 25 enemies of Wolverine normal the Punisher. Oh, okay. Go on.
For that reason, I honestly prefer the combat in Doom Dark Ages more, because it does give me
Go. You can start.
But if I'm being totally honest, I do respect the combat design of Doom Eternal more. I'll freely admit that it's better constructed and will have a much longer shelf life than I expect Dark Ages will. As much as I had a great time shooting and doming demons in Dark Ages, I do wish that it had carried over at least a few of the things that made Eternal so great.
Pick your hero or villain. I'm not judging.
You can order the pizza and then you don't know actually what kind of size it actually gives, so you thought it came in the standard 6 slices or some shit. It turns out it came in 4 slices instead.
Writing a sick-ass Cyber Dragon should have been a slam dunk, but owing to a baffling control scheme, it really sucks, and I was always bummed out
Tak
whenever
cukup,
I
tak
hop on
cukup.
that thing. Thankfully, there isn't too much of it, so it's not too big a deal.
Alright, bro.
What's the mission again? Let me see. The fitness and damage is Wolverine. Wolverine lah. Wait, now I sama pick Wolverine.
Push. Dia
30
dapat dah.
seconds before you
Macam mana
attack.
dia dapat dah?
Get ready.
Apa ni? Apa ni? Apa ni? Tu lah.
I'm the brightest.
Ah, not there.
You're gonna get burned.
Dia beli ya? Ya, saya tak mengetahuinya. Hai, terbang. Turun.
Saya belum buat tahu je.
Buat tahu eh.
The battle starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All you need to do is capture the mission area. Got it?
If I don't finish this event pun tak kisah sebab I have a Wolverine Battle Pass punya skin apa.
Yeah, same here.
Tapi susah saja buat boleh lah. Ha.
Yeah. Shit.
Oi.
Oh, kau ya. Oh, chill. Bantuan. Ada orang gila membuk saya.
They captured the mission area.
Aduh, sakit.
Ada sah. Lewat, bro, jangan ada ni. Hold play.
Babi.
Double KO.
I am rekindled.
Wes.
Same goes for the mech missions. It's obviously near and dear to Hugo Martin's heart, given his Pacific Rim background. It's a
Professional.
cool spectacle, it's a bit of mindless fun, but it's ultimately just really one-dimensional padding. You could kind of just delete from the game, and I think the game would be better for it. Again, not too many of these missions though, so it's not a big deal. Music though, man, I feel so bad for anyone who has to follow in Nick Gordon's footsteps. Fuck that. I cannot imagine a worse gig. I was really rooting for the team of composers who were replacing Nick because everyone would have loved to have seen this team succeed, but unfortunately it just didn't come together. Barring one or two tracks that didn't hit right, the rest of the OST just sounded super generic. It really lacks the
Cik potong.
genius and flair that made
Potong
Nick
kau.
genius. It's a real shame that Marty and Mick couldn't sort this mess out somehow because sadly, Doom the Dark Ages suffered immensely from his absence. So this is one of those outros where I feel like I need to justify why I am recommending this game. I mean, I said the story sucks, the combat is less sophisticated than Doom Eternal, the dragon riding sucks, the mechs suck, the OST is downgraded. Why am I recommending this?
Keep going.
Well, the honest answer is because it's really, really fun, and that is the bottom line that you should never lose sight of when critically evaluating video games. We can nitpick a game until the cows come home, but if you have fun playing it, then that's the whole game. I spent 20 hours doing the Dark Ages, and I enjoyed almost every one of them. Visually, it's spectacular, and the technical performance is in another solar system compared to the optimization we typically get in this day and age. The open plan level design is a really welcome change that allows you to set your own pace, just as the new difficulty options allow you to precisely calibrate how easy or tough this experience should be. The core combat model is unique and fresh, and you've never played a shooter quite like this before. It's a 3D bullet hell, fantasy melee action game hybrid. It's Doom crossed with Returnal, crossed with Skyrim, crossed with Sekiro, and if that isn't a sick combination, then I don't know what is. It's really only in comparing it to the depth and sophistication of Eternal that we can see where it falters.
Tu lah nak ulting dengan Luna pun tak tahu bila. Sebab semua macam mati je.
Blood flowing and how it incites the feeling that I don't think any other game, even Eternal, can match. Rolling credits on Doom the Dark Ages, my thoughts turn to the future of id Software. Perhaps it's wishful thinking. The Dark Ages felt a little bit like a send-off for how playful it is. Like I said, it has that kind of spin-off energy almost. Like we were just letting off steam with this one after 15 years of working on this bottom trilogy. Each one of these modern releases has had their
30
highs and
seconds
lows,
before you
but as a
attack.
body of
Let's get
work, it's
ready.
hard to point to many developers who have had such a
Shall we
consistent
wreak
track
some
record
havoc?
and who have had so much impact on the genre
Brightest in
or on
the
the
sky.
industry at large. My hope is that these
Mr. Fantastic balik. Oh, dia dah habis dah mission ni.
Who knows
Okay.
what might be in store for them.
My
And the
invention
Architecture
I've
of
seen
Doom, The Dark
wonders
Ages
of.
is a
the
good
best
video
thing I
game.
ever
It's on
built
Game Pass, so
was
it's
my
super easy to get your hands on. You're gonna have a good time playing it. I recommend it too.
The battle starts in 5, 4,
So that's
3.
Doom, The Dark Ages, and as we've discussed, it runs incredibly well and looks great while doing it. That's very much what we've come to expect from a better mess around. But there are ways that you can push this game's fidelity and performance even further, and almost all of those ways rely on technology from this video's sponsor, NVIDIA. NVIDIA 50 series GPUs deliver game-changing capabilities that transform the way you play. One of the biggest headline features that NVIDIA 50 series GPUs offers is multi-frame generation. This is technology that can add up to 3 additional frames per rated frame. Games like Doom, The Dark Ages, you can see up to 300 frames per second, resulting in the smoothest possible frame rate experience while fully utilizing the capabilities of high-frame rate. But even without that technology enabled, the raw processing power of the 50 series GPU is unmatched. Playing on an RTX 5090 without any frame gen enabled, I was able to run a 4K every single setting set to Ultra Nightmare, which is the max, and I was getting over 100 FPS with DLSS quality. And that DLSS hits different in Doom Dark Ages because it's actually DLSS 4, one of the headline offerings of NVIDIA's acceleration GPUs. DLSS is a technology that essentially reconstructs an image using AI models, and this latest
Haha! Ho ho! Alamak.
and ray reconstruction. If you don't know what all that means, don't worry. Bottom line, games that utilize DLSS to hit desired frame rates, which is most of these days, will look better when powered by DLSS 4. DLSS 4 and multi-frame gen don't have the sort of headroom you'll need if you're going to enable ray tracing, which you get path tracing and DLSS ray reconstruction after launch. So we're talking industry-leading technology that results in a detailed and immersive visual experience on PC. Finally, Doom The Dark Ages also supports NVIDIA reflex technology that reduces input latency by 50%. This is huge.
You fuck my wife!
Where split-second
Never mind, aku mati. Tak, dia mati.
Doom The Dark Ages is a market
Pergi kat dapur you, cakap kat dia, you fuck my wife!
hardware, allowing you to maximize resolution, quality, frame rates, and responsiveness thanks to DLSS 4, ray tracing, multi-frame generation, and NVIDIA reflex. To learn more about NVIDIA's game-changing hardware, click the link below. Thanks to NVIDIA for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.
Just who I was looking for.
Well, hello there. Careful, cephalopods are quite intelligent.
Lemah Wolverine.
A futile attempt.
Dapat punya nama finally.
Maybe they're spawning monsters.
Oh Allah.
The more the merrier.
Here is still yours.
將 B B 清潔好啦，幫佢着翻好 B B 嘅衣服啦，擺翻落個床仔度，然後咧就俾
Oh,
媽
nice.
啊傾訴咗佢想講嘅嘢，因為唔係咁多呢啲。
You'll have to keep fighting until we have a winner.
俾你
Control
得亦都
walls.
唔會俾個媽媽 B B 啊同佢傾偈啊。今集
What happened?
視障人士
I got you.
生活，
No fucking wonder.
揾到屬於自己嘅光芒，跳出框框，活出無限可能。
Their team's capture
Hello?
progress is past the
Hello?
halfway point. Control
How do I
C.
sound?
咁我咧就
You'll have to keep fighting until we have a winner.
How do I sound?
You sound like Psycho.
Control walls.
No, like
Oh, you mean your mic?
yeah.
Okay now.
It's okay now. Okay, I see why you guys were hearing my why you could hear my game yesterday.
What was it? Ay.
using my headphone punya mic. Those things.
Your powers are nothing! Predictable, I'm look behind me. Feeling fences.
What is this game?
We'll have to keep shooting until we have a winner. Almost clear.
King high.
已經做咗個手術啦。咁做完手術之後咧，我個視力咧好差，我淨係睇到少少嘅色嘅啫。所有嘅人啊，
Big win！
總之一個人屋企我就驚。
Wow.
咁有時先翻落街買嘢啦，
Kaya tarikannya
我
amat
覺得佢
tinggi.
點解好似比平時耐咗咧？我就諗埋一啲好壞嘅嘢啦，會唔會有交通意外啊？咁樣咧就個心又好驚，又有時驚到喊喎，又打唔到電話俾先生喎。雖然我有智能手機啦，但係咧我嗰時係唔識用嘅，食下啲藥丸就食咗一粒，咁我咧就會揾翻佢出嚟。咁我哋咧就唔會話亂咁掃啦，尤其藥丸好容易掃入去㗎嘛。咁我哋教我哋咧就係有方法嘅，一集係自己張台，你會知道你嘅台係點樣㗎嘛。咁樣我哋壓落去嘅，譬如藥丸係會凸起㗎嘛，咁我哋就一集一集去揾，就唔會話搣嗰啲位置啦。啊，咁樣嗰度啊，咪揾翻粒藥丸咯。金水都有
I'll play one last game.
啊，same 啊。
有啲中意拎起去倒嘅，咁你就大概知道重量啦，然後有啲特別嘅杯會發聲嘅，去到某個 level 咧，嗰個杯會有啲聲出嚟。同埋咧，我覺得最幫得手係個智能電話咯。
Green or orange?
咁我
Okay.
哋咧，如果係
I just
唔
picked
失
the
明嘅
top
朋
right
友
one.
仔咧，連個熒光幕都唔開㗎
Okay,
啦。
so there.
咁我因為仲睇到啲咧，我有時都中意開翻個熒光幕嘅。譬如我煮嘢食咧，除咗靠睇嗰嚿肉有冇改變到
Orange,
啊，
yeah.
其實咧聽嗰個。
I got emotion.
Innovation
You
in the
already
triple
got emotion.
Alah. Alah.
It's correct.
Alah.
Bethesda are really crushing it lately with Machine Games releasing Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which may be one of the best video games related to a movie, and the mic drop explosion that was Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered, which, don't worry, I will be going back and taking a review at that at some point soon. But I think it's safe
バイコ
to
タ
say
コンゾロセタメコタケのモノトエツソクベキとか
latest release in the Doom franchise with Doom The Dark Ages. Thanks so much. Said, I got the check.
Okay, let it out.
Gotta say, The Dark Ages. Damn
Wait.
Here's to feeling good all the time.
Set before the events of Doom 2016 and Doom The Dark Ages has been returning to the boots of the famous Doom Slayer, just like we expected.
Alright.
Doom game released
Let's go.
by id Software and Bethesda,
Yes.
ripping and tearing your way through
yeah.
hordes of familiar and new enemies. However, things are a little differently in the Dark Ages compared to Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. Also, just quickly, for those of you who are looking for a review from someone who agrees everything about Doom, I want to check out my mate Lives, because my first experience playing and finishing a Doom game was with Doom 2016. Because, little story, as a kid, my brother showed me Doom 3 and it scared the
You'll need a
shit
top-notch
out of me.
team to win
And it
this
still
one.
scares the shit out of me. But I've played Doom 2016, Doom Eternal, and on the channel you'll find the reviews for the Ancient Gods Part 1 and Part 2. So Doom isn't a new experience for me, but if you're after a deep dive of the nitty-gritty of the Dark
Don't
Ages,
have to be a
can't really
witch to
do it.
find
But
a
I can
man.
provide you my
Eat nuts
as someone who's
I'm the brightest anyone
Doom the Dark Ages.
anyone
Stats
stands
for those of you who want to know, but I was running
I've
Doom
seen
Dark
anyone
Ages on my
stand. I've
PC.
seen wonders out there in the cosmos. Few humans will ever. I'm the brightest in the Step aside, brightest in the
Personally, I didn't
The multiverse offers
gameplay,
endless
nor did I
possibilities.
have any
but your mileage may vary
Like,
depending on your hardware.
teacher.
This is also
There's
my
not
first
30 seconds
experience
before you attack.
playing and reviewing a Doom game on PC as well,
Only
because
yummy,
well,
yummy.
the ancient
Only
Doom
yummy,
game
yummy.
2016 and Doom Eternal played on Xbox. This is the first time I'm doing it on
Who
PC.
better to put
So it
them
is a
back
bit of a
together
night
than
day
you and
difference
me?
with how quickly you can move and change your weapons and how you get used to sort of the gameplay going from controller to mouse and keyboard.
Look at him. Look at him, so cute.
The battle starts
Now,
in
as I just
5,
mentioned, Doom the
4,
Dark Ages is set
3,
before the events of
2,
Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, where the
All you
Slayer
need to
is
do is
fighting
capture the mission
alongside
area.
the Night
Got it?
Sentinels against the armies of Hell. Now, the overall plot and the story premise does make it a little bit more fantasy.
Oi.
Got him.
Does your name suggest,
Slayer
Fox?
is the only thing that the demons of hell fear.
Oh ya, ada 3 mutant kat sini.
He can then defeat the Slayer and naturally he'll reign in hell. So Azarek and the demons of hell lay siege to the Night Sentinel to go after
This
the
spot requires
Architect
attention.
and it's up to the Doom Slayer. Azarek, play demons. As you can see through the game, isn't set in but it's also not set in a story.
Aduh.
The Doom the Dark Ages is sort of set in a alternate world where sci-fi and medieval come together. And yes, there are some sci-fi elements here and there with some makers, but also
That's when I
castles,
want to make the
sea
same
warfare,
mistakes
giant
again.
dead
Goodbye.
behemoth titans whose bodies fall on landscapes on planets, and it's just old school brutal combat.
Oh, you got my day. Nggak apa-apa, aku on the way. Oh. Nggak bisa. Pakai kok.
Time to work some magic.
There's more than one. Team player. That's me.
Ah, behold.
Every case is different.
I merely wish that
Yummy, yummy.
by the heroes. So it begins. Feeling stronger already. As cold-hearted as your name suggests, Faust. Double KO! Leave the magic to the grown-ups, Ileana.
Most likely.
Sorcerer Supreme! Almost there! Don't turn that out! Watch me measure my strength! Vehicle reached a checkpoint. Keep up the momentum.
Faham. Faham.
I want to.
Looking menacingly, showing dominance alpha energy, you know.
Double
My
KO!
teammates too good. Berjalan tadi mereka takut.
Unk has been removed from play. You belong to me!
Eh, belah.
Macam mana lu berjalan tu? Pakai controller.
Controller.
Bodoh.
Oi, sakit.
Semata-mata seorang.
Jadi tu. Lagi dapat ambil.
I'm ready to put on a show!
Oi.
Speaking of gameplay, Doom the Dark Ages
My
Doom
fate
Eternal,
isn't sealed yet.
Black eye, black eye. Allahu Akbar.
Bulletstorm may be all my favourite Australian titles in space, but set in a merged world between sci-fi, fantasy, and doom,
Aku juga
the slow and paceless combat here in the Dark Ages is underrated. Now, Doom 2016 gave us a decent variety
Don't let anything stand in your way.
and Doom Eternal had the meat hook of dashing, giving us increased movement and such, the Dark Ages is slower. There's no dashing here, there's no defending vehicle, there's no shoulder mounted grenade, mounted flamethrower. Instead, you've got a shield to block the armor. Especially sort of at the start, and it's emphasized too with the sound unit.
Oh, sorry.
A little bit like Marines would stomp around in Space Marines and play Bolter. But while the movement is slower here, the variety of enemy attacks in the Dark Ages isn't any less. Now I'll get the weapons from the Dark Ages, but the dread and fire shield is actually not Nobody can stand up against a full and I think it is leaps above. But when you start to see the shield is used for playing on the Slayer will bring up the shield block attack. Yes, the shield has a little
Oh, mommy.
If you will, or the shield's ability, while blocking, you won't be able to block for a short period.
No.
With that, enemies have two variety of attacks, or two variants of attacks. The red attacks, which can simply be blocked, or you can just strafe and avoid and get out of the way of them. And green attacks can be parried and sent back to its enemy. For example, the Stalker Imps will fire a giant cross fireball. If you parry a green one, you will send it back to an imp faster than an old man trying to send back soup in a deli.
You wanna keep playing? Go.
Apa tu?
But range attacks are the only things that can be parried, as some enemies, like say the Hell Knights, don't overly use range attacks, but they will run and jump into combat into you, and you
Go for the
can
game.
attacks, leaving them exposed. Or larger demons like the Cyber Demon can actually be parried when they strike. And for the Cyber Demon, you kind of need to get up close with them and parry their attacks, because any of their attacks, even their range attacks, can really fuck you up if you're not being careful.
Become low again.
In the second mission and for the rest of the game, you will
Why are you gonna go
upgrade the
play?
shield, turning it from a standard shield to block attacks to a heavy metal version of Captain America, where the shield gets a motorized chainsaw blade wrapping around the shield, even with this little pull to start chain.
What you are doing?
I don't know why, it always got a laugh out of me. But the shield can then be thrown around the room to immediately take out smaller targets like zombies, demons,
I feel you, man.
or they can actually be impaled into larger demons, stunning them for a few moments, so you can either then deal some uninterrupted damage to them, or you can focus on newer targets.
You know, sometimes I forget that I can actually speak louder in this
shield
room.
saw here in Doom the Dark Ages feels really damn satisfying to throw around and catch, and I love seeing a room of demons to then just bounce my shield saw off of them. Naturally, too, the shield saw can be upgraded, and it is needed for some enemy varieties as well, like say shielded enemies. Now, standard hard metal shielded enemies can block your attacks, and the shield saw will do nothing to them. However,
Daddy cool. Semua nyanyi sekali tu. Itu tu.
And then you'll immediately be rewarded with armor pickups. And a little bit later in the game, you will find the same variants, but instead of hard metal,
Bodoh Saki.
it's made out of plasma.
Apa? Jump Knight, Moon Knight, apa? Jump Knight, Shovel Knight, Hollow Knight. Daddy Knight in the moon.
Bouncing off of them before returning. So if you see a heap of cannon fodder enemy,
Bodoh.
one singular energy
Everyone's a nine.
Tu Saki ni bos tu.
just fight with the Assassin's Creed Twitter account.
You're gonna cry in the car.
Now, later in the story, without getting into any spoilers, you will unlock upgrades to the shield known as runes, and these activate when you parry attacks. So, not Assassin's Creed Twitter. Me, they would get owned harder than Grum's fight with the Assassin's Creed Twitter account.
You're gonna cry in the car.
Now, later in the story, without getting into any spoilers, you will unlock upgrades to the shield known as runes, and these activate when you parry attacks. So not only will you send range attacks back to enemies, or you will stun a melee attack, but a rune might say have spectral daggers that shoot out and attack nearby enemies, or you will get a shoulder-mounted cannon that will auto-target an enemy in front of you, but it will only activate when you parry an enemy attack, so you can't just use it at any time. So if we're just looking at the shield here, the shield is used for defense, but then you've got the shield saw for, you know, use for offense, bouncing it off enemies in a room. And in some instances, it can keep you alive a bit longer because, you know, you can throw it off against a shielded enemy and you can get some armor back, or you can throw it into a plasma shielded enemy and take out some of the lesser demons.
Expedition.
Then you've got runes on top of that, which then help provide you some crowd control too. And I think it's a pretty versatile ability, weapon, and defensive capability. That's probably the reason why it's my favorite. But alright, what else is there besides the Slayer's shield? Well, you've got standard weapons like you'd expect in a Doom game, like the combat shotgun, the super shotgun. There's a play on the plasma gun with the accelerator, but then there's the replacement of the standard assault rifle, or maybe not replacement, but in this medieval world of an assault rifle, you get the shredder, which rapidly fires out nails. Then you've got the chain shot, which basically is a rifle that fires a literal ball and chain at targets. It does really good damage and it can remove armor from enemies and exposing up some weak points, but it is a gun that physically fires a ball on a chain and there is no reload. So sort of, it's a bit like, say, a fishing rod. You fire the ball out, if you miss your target, and you've got to reel it back in. So it does leave you exposed if you missed your targets. But if maybe you saw the video on Bethesda and Doom's social media pages, then it comes as no surprise that my favorite weapon is the Skull Crusher. It is a weapon that literally puts skulls into a vice and crushes them and fires the shards of skulls at enemies.
90% of people in the market don't have a systematic key or don't follow the rules. If you don't trust me,
I hate to say it, but
Yeah, not to be contradictory, but it's very metal.
Now, the Skull Crusher is sort of like a short-ranged, wide-reach, quick-fire scatter shotgun, like a flak cannon. And it fires pretty damn quickly, but it's also very easy to get lost in the constant animation of skulls being crushed. Now, I know I've run out of ammo just by watching the skulls, rather than watching what I'm shooting.
Skulls for the Skull Throne!
Allah, apa pula Nvidia ni? Kau time ni lah kau nak ada update. Aku tak boleh ke tadi tu tak nak pula update. Hai, berat backstream.
But each melee weapon here runs on a cooldown system and can be recharged